Morning, everyone, and welcome to No Capes, the show where we talk about creator owned comics with creators who own comics. Joining me today is the amazing Emily Pearson. Emily, could you introduce yourself a little bit to everyone?
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a comic book artist from California. Work for Black Mask and Vault and Oni Press.
And have done some of my favorite books actually. I loved The Wilds. It was one of the books that really got me into the idea of doing this show about indie books.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I just really loved that concept of it was sort of, the sort of zombie story, but with the plants and the fungus. It was just a really cool idea. I really dug it, and the art was just phenomenal. It was the first thing that attracted me to it was that cover with the person with all the plants growing out of them. I was just like, yeah, no, I need to read whatever this is.
Thank you. Yeah, Natasha Altarisi, I don't know if I say her name right. Did a lot of the main covers I think for the book.
Yep, yep.
She's a fantastic creator, cover artist.
Yeah, and again, like I've actually been waiting for somebody to come to me with the wilds as one of their suggestions so that I could talk about it. So hopefully one of my guests before the end of this season will do so because I've been wanting an excuse to reread it and then talk about it. Every so often, like I love all the books that people suggest, but every so often someone suggests one that is like top 10 for me, and I just get really excited for that episode. And this is one of them, actually. I've been really keen to talk about this book for a while, so I was really excited to see it on your list.
Oh, cool.
So, obviously, if everyone can see it already, we are talking about The Wicked and the Divine today, which is by Kieron and Jamie both wrote it, didn't they? Let me just look this up here. No, art by Jamie, but I'm assuming that they probably did a lot of collaboration on the story, as is sort of natural for these sort of big ongoing books. Um, it's a really interesting, not exactly sci-fi, but sort of fantasy supernatural story about the gods being reborn into mortal bodies every few years or so. Do you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of the story, Emily?
Yeah, so I'm probably gonna butcher this, but as far as the book goes, it's essentially there's these own this own pantheon of different gods from different pantheons, Norse or Greek or whatever it is, and they get reborn every 2 years into usually I think like a teenager, young adult's body.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then yeah, and then after 2 years they die, and while they're alive, most of them become pop stars, which is super fun concept.
Yeah, that was a really interesting take on it. Like I was like, okay, so the gods are reborn, and then I was like, oh, okay, and they're all performers. Interesting. Well, we'll see where this goes. And yeah, like I said, they.
Yeah, I think it's
Sorry, you go.
no, I think it's a really fun concept.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and I liked how they did that instead of just just worship. Going to a chapel and worshiping the gods. Their congregation is concert, is party. That was a really interesting
Yeah,
take on it.
yeah, it's really fun. I think it's like it's interesting because it's like I feel like you could say like a lot of worship already goes into like celebrity worship and like
Yeah.
um definitely with the kind of way we already uh do that with celebrities. I think the interesting thing with like the aspect of they have potentially 2 years to put themselves out there and make like a legacy for themselves or whatever it is. And I think I think someone put it one time that was really interesting to me, where it's it's kind of almost like being on social media some ways, you know, people with really big followings or that are in entertainment, like the creators of this book are, you know, uh have this fan base or these people that they reach out to, and then it's, you know, a lot of the time it doesn't have a huge shelf life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, you could have, I know, a massive, massive following that's almost cultish, but it can disappear in an instant, and it's not
Mm.
going to be there forever.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really interesting how they do that with this too. Like you said, they've got 2 years to make a mark and to enjoy their god powers, to do whatever
Yeah.
they choose to do with that power.
I think that's really interesting because I think I'm not sure about other people, but for me personally, if I was like offered like a deal of like getting god powers and like becoming super famous for 2 years and then dying, like I don't think I'd really be interested in. Um, so it's like it's interesting to see the type of people that are like
Yeah,
wanting to do this and wanting to have this be their lives for a couple years.
right? Like you have to be a certain kind of person to trade
Hmm.
fame for a long and healthy life.
Yeah, exactly.
And I found it really interesting how they started it here too, with the flashback to, you know, the 1920s/30s era of the Pantheon.
Hmm. Yeah, that was really interesting.
And just the detail in the work as well. You know, Jamie always does really cool work, but I feel like the work done on this book is just something special.
Hmm.
It's really got its own feel and its own sort of unique vibe for the whole book.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a wonderful artist. I think I think the style like definitely lends itself to the book as well. I think
Yeah.
it's like you read books like Saga for instance, and it kind of has
Yes.
that same thing to it through the art because it's very clean and easy to read.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it. And Saga was one of the first major you know, non-superhero series that I started getting into when I started making my journey away from you know, the big two.
Hmm.
And I just walked into a comic shop and found the first hardcover of Saga, and I was like, this looks like it's my vibe. Let's give it a go. And then next thing you know, I'm 40 something issues deep, and they go on hiatus,
Yeah.
indefinite hiatus. And for those that are in the chat, if you're not familiar with Jamie McKelvie, Jamie does a lot of really great books, and Jamie's design was actually what the movie suits for Captain Marvel were based off, which
Hmm.
was really cool. When I started seeing that doing the rounds, when the first photos started to come out, I was like, "Oh, cool! That's really good recognition." That and I like a good design that they chose to base it off.
Yeah, I think his like his designs for costumes and characters in comics, even in just like the Wicked and Divine too, where it's like not very, it's not, you know, a superhero book. Like, um, the characters just like, especially like in their like pop star outfits and stuff, look
Yeah,
super wonderful.
they've got such cool looks, and I mean, you especially see it with bloody Woden and his Valkyries and stuff. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the sort of Daft Punk inspired but super synthwave neon look was just really striking immediately. You know, obviously Woden turns out to be kind of a shitbag, but
Well, they all do to a certain extent, so.
it's true. It's true. I honestly can't decide who exactly was the worst of them, but Woden's definitely up there.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting how they brought us straight into this ritual here, essentially. You know, there's the skulls of each of the gods that have already been killed, and
Hmm.
she leaves the remaining four here to just take themselves out. And I actually also really appreciated the fact that Susanoo was, one of the chosen. Yeah, they didn't choose just your straight up most popular like Norse and Celtic gods that people already know through mainstream comics and supernatural TV shows and stuff like that. It was nice to see a few lesser known mythological entities chosen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of there's definitely like more popular ones that exist within this world, but there's a lot that I feel like unfamiliar with the god. It's kind of interesting to be introduced to them through this. Like there's so many that I'd never heard about before, you know.
Yeah, I didn't know all of them, but when I was obviously being an ADHD, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, I absorbed every mythology book I could get my hands on at the school library.
Yeah.
So a lot of these names are like, I can't remember who you are, but I recognize that name, and that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah, same here. I think it's interesting because then it's like the gods that you're very familiar with, like someone like, for instance, it's just like completely different character, where it's just like, oh, she's a little girl. So
Yeah,
it's so interesting to like. It makes me wonder how close the gods that I'm unaware of, like how close they are to the actual mythology.
yeah, right. And Minerva appears. Uh, Actually, how long's it been? Yes, it's already been 10 minutes. So if you care about spoilers, you might want to bugger off, read the comic, and come back and watch the YouTube video. Otherwise, keep watching because we're going to talk about this book and whatever stuff we know, and you might get spoilers. So just be prepared for that. Um, I really like how Minerva, both in this incarnation and in the future incarnation, turned out to be a little girl as well. Like the youngest out of the entire pantheon.
Hmm.
And but even both times it was apparently unusual for her to manifest in such a young child.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting for sure because she definitely feels like, she's the goddess of wisdom and everything like that. She
Yeah,
definitely feels like she seems like she's freaking out a lot of the time, but she also definitely seems like she's the most well-rounded out of all of them.
right. Yeah, like she has like natural, tween high emotions sort of reactions to things, but at the same time, will instantly turn around and have that weird, wise beyond their years, possessed little girl horror movie vibe,
Yeah.
which, yeah, is really freaky. And I love that they work that in there as well.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting with, obviously this main character's story, how she
Hmm.
eventually turned out to be one of the gods. She thought she was just a fangirl.
Hmm. Yeah, because she though from the beginning of the story, she was just like, oh yeah, the page that you just went by where she was in the bathroom, where it's just like she just wants to be a god. She's trying to dress like them and she's trying to act like them and she's not able to like fool herself. So it's really interesting that like she ends up being one and it just completely changes her as a person.
Right? And yeah, and I also like that. the way they did it with that, the first god she really interacts with is Lucifer, obviously. And then it turns out that she's Persephone.
Love that. I thought that was, I don't know, it's very clever.
Yeah, I really liked that. And because they chose Lucifer instead of Hades, I didn't immediately connect those dots because I was not focusing on it.
Hmm.
But as soon as I was like, oh, wait, yeah, God of Hell, the underworld. Okay, yeah, that tracks. That's cool. I like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something interesting about this too, is like I think they have like one or two gods from like similar pantheons, like like Persephone and like and Minerva and stuff like that. But it was interesting to me is that they don't repeat the same gods. So like
Yeah.
uh yeah, if you have like someone like Lucifer versus someone like Hades, like they don't have the same like representations of gods. Like they don't have um I'm not sure how to say his name. Baal, I
Oh, yeah,
think.
yeah, yep.
Because like they wouldn't have him and like Thor basically together. I feel like
Yeah,
because they're both like weather lightning gods.
exactly. But they do have Woden, and can't remember. Have you discovered? Are you far enough through it that you've discovered where Woden's powers truly come from yet?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was revealed to be, deity wise.
I can't remember either. I just remember reading that part.
Yeah, I remember like turning the page on that, and I was like, "What the? Okay."
Yeah.
Because yeah, like you said, usually they don't have two that closely from the same pantheon. Like, I mean, in this pantheon here, we do have Minerva, Persephone, and Cassandra,
Hmm.
but they're not like super closely related in the mythology, so it's not too unusual. And I did like how, in the previous pantheon we had Susanoo, whereas now we have his older sister instead.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have a fire/sun god from the Japanese pantheon, but it's big sister little brother swap,
Hmm.
and that was a really cool touch as well. I love how they all just perform their miracles just by clicking.
Yeah, it feels very like oh, it just feels like very like TV trope, but in a good way. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like where it's it's like fun and a little cheesy, but like in a way that doesn't seem annoying.
yeah, yeah. It was really entertaining. And I really liked the design for this iteration of Lucifer as well.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I
Uh,
love like her backstory where she was kind of like I think like she had a completely different personality and style to her. She was like a Midwesterner farmer, I believe.
yeah,
And then like she just turns around and becomes this very like oh my gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess like an alt sort of looking person.
yeah,
It's very cool.
yeah. No, I really liked it. It's and like I've got strong now. Like Tom Ellis's Lucifer gives me strong vibes from this Lucifer as well.
Hmm.
Like I feel like if there was ever a crossover, they'd probably get along really well. But I
Yeah.
really dug that they went with the blonde, white suited, the light bringer look instead of just making Lucifer a gothy punk or something.
Yeah. That's very cool.
A lot of people sort of do that with their devil incarnate sort of characters and just make them very spiky and wearing all black or red and super, super, super alt, but they went with that more Bowie esque light and fun. And, like, of course they would. Like, they call Lucifer the Prince of Lies, but he's supposed to be able to, convince people and tempt them and get them to do what he wants. So why the hell wouldn't she be a very appealing, charismatic figure instead of a scary one?
Yeah.
I've always thought that, and which is what I liked with the Lucifer TV show. He is that handsome, charismatic guy, but he's got the devil face as well. But he can reveal that at will, so he can be scary when he wants to be. But of course he's going to have a look that appeals to people. How else is he going to convince them to sell their souls to him?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think Lucifer probably has one of my favorite designs from the book.
Yeah,
It's very simple, but it's super straightforward, and I don't know. It's very appealing.
it is. I liked Bust's look as well.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I mean, they've all got fantastic designs, to be honest. Like, they're all really interesting.
They do. Yeah, I keep like thinking like maybe this is my favorite one, and then I keep going back and forth because
I
there's so
know.
many good looks.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I love how a few of these people, like here, this reporter, this is the one that turns out to be Cassandra, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, and like there are so many people that turn out to be gods and don't realize yet.
Yeah.
And I found it really funny that, well, not funny, but interesting that this person who is so skeptical and kind of resentful of them ended up being one.
But I think that was one of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah, and she just seemed so frustrated and exasperated by that realization and discovery. I do like how, throughout the book, of course, she still maintains this attitude of who she is and just doesn't have time for the other gods' bullshit.
Yeah, it's definitely she seems like a lot less like scheming and like
Yeah,
manipulative or anything like that. She's very straightforward and very like upfront.
yeah, right. She'll just tell you straight away what she thinks of the situation and what she thinks of the dumb shit you just told.
Yeah.
Yep, I was just sort of refamiliarizing myself with this scene, and thought that was a good gag as well with the laser pointer in Suckmet. But then, immediately turning this comedic moment around, and it turns out that there's someone trying to fucking kill them.
Yeah. Oh, I love the. I'm looking at the pages too, and I love the action. It's so like as a comic book artist, like I feel like action's like the hardest thing for me to draw,
Oh,
and
tell me
this
about
is
it.
just so
Tell me about it. Jesus.
clear and readable.
It is. And for me, like, the thing I've struggled with for years, which I'm finally starting to get a bit more of a grasp on as I relax and just start drawing shit that I'm not used to drawing, is
Hmm.
like getting an action pose, but having it not look static. Like, the pose is really
Yeah,
dynamic, but on the page, it doesn't look like it has the energy. And
that's my biggest problem. Yeah.
I always appreciate when someone draws a pose like that and it actually does look really dynamic. It doesn't look frozen in place.
It's super hard because there's something about just drawing even like expressive faces sometimes too. It's when you draw it, it's like it's one thing like getting it accurate and correct, and then like keeping the energy with it and making it
Yeah,
look
right? Like you've got to
like it's
capture
actually moving.
exactly. You have to
Yeah.
capture that energy in a single frame, and it
Hmm.
can be really hard to maintain that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this frame with Lucy standing in the window too.
Oh, yeah, it's very, oh, it's so good. It's it's like the whole there's a lot going on the page with the first panel and everything, but it's like your eye is still completely drawn to it.
Yeah,
It's a very good moment.
right. And it's immediately an oh they're fucked. You can she's just standing there, but you know that those guys are about to get minced. You can just feel it. I also love the barefoot part of Lucy's design. I forgot about that until this scene.
Hmm.
It gives me very strong. Hang on, let me remember the name. I have forgotten the actor's name right now. What's his name? What's his
Especially because they keep doing a lot of symbolism with like broken glass
name?
with
Yeah,
Lucifer. I don't know, it's interesting.
yeah. Peter Stormare in Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get strong vibes of that where he descends from the roof barefoot and just walks through across the all the glass and bullshit on the floor. And so I was really appreciated that look. I like
Yeah, me
whether or
too.
not they were inspired by Peter Stormare's Lucifer. I just really appreciate that design for Lucifer. I've always liked
Hmm.
that barefoot, but super well dressed and presented sort of look.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's very good contrast. Yeah, art is so good. It's very like I feel like if you were trying to like read a comic for the first time, um, his art is super easy to follow, and it's I know that sounds kind of weird to say, but like it's still detailed and everything too, so I feel like it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just like this display of sheer unabashed power from Lucifer as well. It was just really cool and set Lucifer up as my favorite fucking character. And then, as you know, fucking gone like an issue or two
Well,
later.
yeah, it's so interesting because, Lucifer is like compared to like the entire series, like Lucifer's in this for a very short amount of time. Um, and it's like she's still considered like one of everyone's favorites and like one of the main characters of the book. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
And then that's it. Like her actions in this first issue set the tone and set events in motion for the rest of the damn story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I thought that was really cool how strongly they set that up in one issue.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think a lot of the actions, like a lot of the story, like focuses on Lucifer and Laura
Yeah,
for the first part of it, but it's very like they just get to know not only the character in a super short amount of time, but also like you said, that sets up the rest of the consequences for the book. Um, it's very well done character. It's
it,
so nice.
yeah, it really. And this page is friggin' incredible.
Hmm.
Like the color choices and everything in this explosion of face.
Yeah, I love this. It's like it's I'm not sure if I remember this right, but it feels like the same effects that happens when the gods are like performing too, which is kind of interesting. But I can't remember exactly if that's correct. But yeah, I love when comics change the style a little bit of the art for like gore or like horror stuff too.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
and there's like it's it too. Like the Technicolor horror is one of my favorite things in comics too.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't have to always be drab reds and browns and whites to get the feeling across of something gruesome and graphic and horrible happening. Like
Yeah,
that to me works way better than if they rendered it in realistic colors.
yeah. I think for someone like me, like I don't like gore at all. So it's like a lot. It's still very impactful, but it's still super readable for someone like me, where it's like, um, it's very graphic, but it's not disgusting, if that makes any
Yeah, no,
sense.
exactly. And that's what I like because you don't have to go for the gross out with the gore. Like so yeah, something can be gory, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a gross out.
Hmm.
It can just be graphic and impactful.
Hmm.
And I really appreciated how they did that in this book. Like, yeah, there's blood everywhere, but I'm not immediately repulsed by it, but I am like, oh shit, that guy's head just exploded.
Yeah.
And yeah, like what a spot to finish that issue on with this, like it's Lucifer. Like, is she did she do it? Or is she telling the truth here, You don't really know what to believe, but her reaction seems genuine.
Yeah.
But she is also the incarnation of the devil, so and it just really sort of set up, like you said, the next cascade of crazy stuff that happens.
Hmm.
And the thing I'm really digging at the moment, looking back through it, is just the efficiency of the line work that Jamie uses in this book. I am always
Mm.
super jealous of people that can convey so much detail with very minimal line.
Yeah, he's that's one of my favorite, um like one of the things I look for, like when I see line art. Um it's just like people that can really clearly define form
Mm,
without color. It's very impressive. Like there's a lot of the time where like even the page on your own, it's like you can kind of see the 3D space around like her figure and stuff like that, and it doesn't feel flat at all, even though it's cel shaded and line art and stuff.
yeah, exactly, and that's it, and that's where I'm looking at it now, and like even the line weighting is very gentle throughout this whole page. Like there, I can see so many places that if I was drawing it, I would have put in so much more of a heavier line weight because I just don't know how to render this efficiently yet. And I'd love to get there one day, and I'm aiming for it. But it's just like, yep, just it's the lines are so thin and crisp and clean, but especially when combined with the coloring for this book,
Mhm.
it's perfect.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like
The
sorry.
colorist, the colorist for the book is Matt Wilson, right?
Yeah, yeah. Matt's done a great
He's
job.
wonderful. Yeah, he's a wonderful artist.
Yeah,
Um,
I especially as as the book goes on and we get more and more of the gods in their performance outfits and stuff like that. The work that he does rendering all of those and the scenes where he chooses to use screen tones and stuff, just
yeah, like
love it.
the head exploding.
Yeah,
It's Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I wish I had another issue lined up ready to flick through because there's just so much to look at that's just fantastic. But also like these panels here, where Lucy is almost just in a void talking, but
Hmm.
it works. It looks so good, and Lucy stands out against the backgrounds, and
Yeah. Yeah, because if I mean if you look at it, like it's very simple. Like on that page, there's two backgrounds that he actually drew in, and then the rest is um like a blank white wall. So
yeah,
it's like, and it's like implying a lot more than there actually is. So it makes it, easy to read.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
very nice.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
I really liked it, especially when they had like an issue with guest artists.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
kind of remember that.
that was really nice. There was a lot of different ranges of styles, but it was really. I think it also had a bunch of different short stories, which he with each of the gods. So that was
Mm,
really interesting to see.
yeah, no, I remember that one. I can't remember the stories, but I remember enjoying that issue. And
Yeah, I remember I really liked Tara's story from that. I
mm,
think because they kept the whole time they kept uh like implying her. I think it was her, unless it was either her or oh man, what's her name? Ayana? I think it was Ayana probably, but I think they kept saying that everyone hated her. And then the story was about people hating her online, and it was about just like you didn't see this character beforehand, and she's just really genuine character that people just don't like because she's very pretty. So it's kind of interesting to see.
yeah, I remember seeing a few people complaining about her online. I was like, what? I just
Oh,
have
I
to,
loved it. Yeah.
yeah, I had to come back to this page because two things in particular make this page one of my favorites is the way that Matt's rendered the light in both the top page and the scene where it's like blinding the assassins, and the textures that
Mm-hmm.
is used to separate the foreground from the background, and like the
Hmm.
texture of the light with the radiating lines behind Lucy just really adds another dimension.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, like he could have chosen to
It's
just go with the glow, but he added those radiating lines, and it just lifts it even more.
Yeah, I think one of the things it's just like you can tell with his colors, like he he knows what he's doing completely. He's very practiced and he knows a bunch of different lighting situations. So it's like if I were to try to do something like this where I would, you know, try to light a comic, I think I would just try to do with what I know best, which is not as not nearly as like big of a range of scope of like different techniques. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
just like he's very easily like the backlight for this is going to create the best mood, and the I forget what it's called. Like she's in shadow mostly, but
Mm.
it's like I would never think of that. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? It's like I'm trying to figure out what to say, but it's just like
No, I know what
he
you mean.
knows what he's doing
She's
completely.
mostly rim lit because of the light reflecting
Hmm.
from sort of behind and around in the room, but she's out in the dark.
Yeah, it's it's so good. It just and like what they can bring to the table can definitely change the mood and like the overall style of a comic, really.
Yeah, and I'm looking even closer. I'm noticing more. Like there's a bit of the light flare crossing over Lucy's thighs, just above the knees as well.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't have thought to do that.
Yeah, it's really great. Oh, it's so great. Like I keep looking at this panel. It's like the framing on the wall is like is like framing her face, and it's just like it's very symmetrical,
Mm.
but it's so cool. It's such a good job.
It,
And it's just like I keep thinking about it. It's like he probably drew this like within a day. Like he just did this and moved on.
right? Like, yeah, no, this page would take me forever. I am
Mm,
I am not. This is one of the things that I am so jealous of so many of my peers, because I'm only at the start of my comics journey, is the
mhm.
speed at which they can frigging work. I see people
Yeah.
talking about churning out an entire page of pencils in a day, and I'm like, what? That's like 3 weeks
Yeah,
work for me. How did you do that?
it's difficult too with comics because I feel like a lot of different, people treat comics as something that's done very fast, and it's just like
Mm,
this is you're getting someone to draw like six different pictures on a page in a day.
right,
It's a lot of
right.
work.
Like I've got a
Yeah.
practice comic I'm working on at the moment that I've been working on, unfortunately, for 2 years, because it's not something that I'm doing for pay, so it has to keep getting put down
Mhm.
in favor of work that I can get paid for. And I just can't imagine having finished it in a month, like pencils, colors, inks, everything. I can't imagine it, and
Mhm.
it's only 3 friggin' pages.
Yeah. It definitely like I feel like it's for me at least it gets easier after you like I remember like The Wilds was my first comic, so like working on that and like I just remember the first issue just kicked my ass. Like I was working so much every day like just to try and get it done. And then I
Yeah,
think after the second issue it got monumentally easier. And then issue after that it just got easier and easier until I was able to do, like an issue a month.
yeah. No, I get
But
that.
it's
Um,
yeah.
I did a page for that Project Starless Daydream anthology, and I think if I actually condense the time I spent working on it, it was maybe 3 days,
Hmm.
maybe four
Okay, that's
totally,
not bad. Yeah.
because it was just black and white. It was like I did rough pencils, then I did the black inks and added some screen tones. So I don't
Mhm.
think all up I spent more than a full week, 3 days to a week, somewhere in there. I can't really remember max on that page, and I drew the pencils traditionally and then inked it digitally. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was my first time like learning how to use my new display pen tablet to do the inking, and experimenting with new brushes for Clip Studio, and my first time doing like full screen tone work and stuff like that. So it was a lot of learning curves involved.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's definitely comics are like I feel a lot of people get discouraged when they first start them, but it's just it gets easier and easier
yeah,
every
and that's
page
it.
that you
I've just
do.
got to do more. My issue is though, with my ADHD and the fact that I like my gaming work so much as well. I'm juggling
Hmm.
so many different projects at a time, which is why I'm kind of only doing my own comics projects for now until I get that speed and practice. Because
Hmm.
I would hate to like take a gig on a comic for somebody else's deadline and then fuck it
Hmm.
up.
Yeah, yeah. I it's hard. It's definitely like I've been considering doing webcomics recently, and it's just the workload if you
Oh yeah,
like for those are just insane. It's like
yeah, like
10 or 11 pages a week or something like that.
right, like the amount
So,
of like the people that put a page up every day. I'm like,
yeah.
how?
It's definitely crazy. Like I'm always impressed by it. It's interesting too because I feel like I've noticed I've been drawing for about 10 years and I feel like I've noticed that um as time goes on I get faster and better.
Mm,
So it's like before when I would see people being able to post stuff that they were proud of like every day or every week or anything like that on social media. It's just like how, and it's just like now I'm trying to do, and it's like okay, well, I don't know. I feel like you do something over and over again, you eventually just cut down on the time.
yeah, exactly, and that's it. And like, I can do a single pin-up relatively quickly, but
Mhm.
sequentials is a whole different story.
Mhm.
And that's a thing as well that I've noticed a lot of people are surprised by when they have a crack at it is that yeah, like you might be able to draw a super detailed poster and draw it real quick. But drawing sequentials and thinking about each individual panel and camera angles and making sure that the story makes sense and reads and everything is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think like um it's definitely it's definitely like something I feel like everyone can do, but it's just like I feel like it's also something that you have to be really interested in because I feel like I've
Yeah.
heard some of my some of my art friends that are interested in like biz dev or concept art like get art jobs for comics and because people like their style and I always worry it's like oh if you've never made a comic before you might not like doing it like I love making comics but I it is a ton of work and it's like a ton
It
of
yeah, it really is.
practice before you get somewhere that you're happy with. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. Like I did a few practice comics when I was younger, and then sort of didn't do anything comics related for a long time because I got sidelined by a different creative pursuit for a while, and I learned a lot of skills from that. But I kind of wish I hadn't done it because I got really rusty, and I had to sort of
Mm,
relearn it. I was looking at
yeah.
some old drawings yesterday from back then before I started this other thing for a few years, and I was like, my work and style and proportions and stuff now is technically better than this, but the understanding of anatomy and the dynamism in these pictures is so much better than what I'm doing now because I'm so out of practice.
Mm. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there were just a couple of, practice sketches of martial arts and stuff, and I was like, that looks pretty good. The lighting is good, the dynamism is good. I can draw more detail and do faces better now, but I don't think I could draw something that dynamic and convincing right now.
Hmm.
And it's that
Yeah.
whole thing of not doing it for so long and not like back then I had a sketchbook with me 24/7 and I was drawing literally every day. And then between the new pursuit and my ADHD, it got really hard to actually keep that up. And then I was like, "Oh, I wish I'd never stopped because now I'm finding it hard to start again."
Well, I think that that might be it because I feel like for me personally like it's more of like it can be more of like a confidence thing than
Mm,
actually losing your skill level because
exactly. And
it's
that's what I was saying to my partner
yeah.
last night is like I can see the confidence I had here, not the skill, but the confidence. I wasn't afraid of stuffing it up, and I was confident
Mhm.
that I'd at least be able to get the energy into this picture.
Yeah, because it's like I think that's something that's actually been kind of like bogging me down recently is like I'll do something like I've been having this weird thing with faces recently where it's I'll have to look up reference for every
Mm,
single face that I draw, and it's just like I'm not allowing myself to just go in and just do it and then allow
yep.
it to be whatever it is and allow it to be bad because it's like I think when you're like you said when you're doing it every single day and you're drawing every day like you build up this confidence like I did this yesterday so I can do it today, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't done it in a while it definitely
No, that's exactly right. Because I find
yeah.
myself doing the same thing and looking up every single picture I do. I'm looking up reference for because I'm like,
Hmm.
I have to get this done. I can't afford to have to redo it because I've got 6 other projects on the go right now. And I'm not confident
Yeah.
enough in my ability to get it right first time, so I need to do this reference. And that's sort of is I'm still producing work that I'm proud of, but not work that makes me confident.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that was where I was really glad that I picked this up on Kickstarter last year.
Hmm.
It's Mike Hawthorne's book, the drawing cheat codes, and it's been
Mm.
so handy for me because unlike so many of the other anatomy books that I've got, like that have one drawing and like a page of text explaining the drawing. This is just like drawing in some dot point notes.
Mm. Yeah, I love art books and art instruction like that. Like for me, like I feel like um taking like classes is the best way for me to
Mm,
improve, or like giving myself assignments, because I just have a hard time reading something and then applying it to what I draw.
yeah,
Like I have to do it over muscle memory.
exactly. I actually had got the PDF of this book and printed it out. It's sitting on the floor beside me so that I can put it on the wall above my workstation here. So that if I'm stuck, I
Mm,
will just be able to like look up and go, "Oh, that's how that's supposed to be shaped." Because
yeah.
yeah, I find like reading the anatomy manuals and stuff does not work for me, but having something just broken down into a couple of simple diagrams that I can then just doodle it onto the page while I'm working and go, oh yeah, okay, so I see how these shapes work now. And as soon as I got this book and got to use it for the first time, I created a pin-up piece that I was more proud of than anything I'd drawn in 3 years before that.
That's great. Yeah.
Because I'd been having a really hard time when I first started drawing, like 20 years ago. I learned drawing by sort of mimicking and referencing the cartoons that I was watching. And a lot of that
hmm
at the time was anime, Dragon Ball Z and mecha cartoons and stuff like that. So it took forever to try to break anime habits when I wanted to draw more Western style comic art.
I hear that all the time. It's so interesting because I definitely grew up wanting to draw comics, and like I would do the same thing. I would take a comic and I would copy a panel and I would try to practice that way. And it's like really interesting because I hear all the time that a lot of people who grew up with manga have a hard time adapting to different styles, or like I hear a lot of art teachers specifically get upset by that. And
Mm,
it's just interesting to me because I feel like something like manga has it's so interesting. Like anime and manga have their own set of rules for for anatomy and facial proportions,
right?
and it's like clearly defined too. It's like its
Yeah.
own
And
it's
that's what
it's its own set of like rules.
it
It's
is.
weird.
It really is. And that's what made my work look really weird for so many years. Because I was drawing Western style bodies, but
mm,
sort of
yeah.
more anime inspired. It was a weird blend, and it didn't quite work. Like I wasn't drawing anime and manga proportioned heads, but the way they draw their noses, eyes, and mouths was what I was applying to my more comic style heads. And it was a weird blend, and it never quite worked. And it took forever to break those habits. Because, like, the body stuff did not take very long for me to get used to and get into more comic style proportions and stylistic choices. The
Mhm.
faces, however, took years and years and years and years and years. And I feel like I only really unlocked it with that piece that I did from that book.
Mhm.
Because the page I did, which inspired that piece, was a lot more sort of. It was a bit of a blend of at the manga and Western because it was for a comic that was billed as the finale to a mecha anime that never existed.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like I finally sort of leveled up and unlocked it, and it was the best face I've ever drawn. And so now I'm just trying to keep that going.
Yeah, it's definitely like I, I feel like every time I learn anything about art, like I open up like more things that I need to learn, and like the
Mm,
better I get, like the
no,
worse I feel sometimes, because it's like I realize how much I don't actually know.
no,
And
I
so
I know exactly what you mean.
it's it, yeah,
Yeah, every
it's
time
it's
I get a
hard.
little
Yeah,
bit better.
yeah, I've been like studying a lot different like levels of stylization, because I
Mm,
for myself I can't really stick to one style. Like I go back and forth between doing cartoony stuff to semi-realistic. So
yeah,
it's like I've been trying to study like the different levels of like how they vary, and it's mostly from what I've noticed just in the faces. Like the
yeah,
bodies relatively seem to stay the same unless you get to something that's very like chibi or like network cartoon or something
yeah.
like that.
But yeah, like you're right. It's really in the detail and style of the face.
Mhm.
Because I've seen quite a few. Like I've seen a few people even do like a couple of demonstrations of that, where they'll take the exact same figure and just
Mhm.
remove a few lines and change the way they draw the face, and
Yeah.
suddenly it's way more cartoony. And something like Jamie's style here is kind of where I'd like to eventually settle. I feel like it's a really happy medium in between that cartoony and then that hyper realistic superhero style that's been getting popular over the last few years.
Mhm.
I'm not a
Yeah,
huge
it's
fan of that.
yeah, it's interesting. I definitely like it's hard for me to like because like this it feels very clearly defined, but I think one of the problems I have with like my more semi-realistic styles is like if I don't catch myself, it'll just drift more and more realistic until it gets too much, you know. Like so
Yeah,
it's something like this I feel like he very well defined like or like he very easily knows where his like stylization
yeah,
sits.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
And this is
it's
a really nice level of stylization for me.
mm,
Um, I wouldn't
mm-hmm,
want to go too much more cartoony, which is where my style is at right now. Is a bit more cartoony than this, but also a lot of like the Marvel and DC comics at the moment are like at least half again in towards the realism style and a lot more intricate detail in the facial features and all that sort of stuff, that the very highly rendered stuff.
yeah.
And
I
I'm
don't prefer that for comics either.
yeah, I find it hard to read. Like
Yeah, me too. It's interesting because it's like I think we were talking about before, where it's like you can lay out a page and you can lay out the panels to be fast and like get through it quickly. Where it's like I've read like fully painted comics before and they look good. Like it's obviously like there's no question about whether the skill is there or not, but it's hard for me to read through because
mm,
everything feels stiff and it doesn't feel
exactly.
like if you can't like imagine the in-betweens of like people moving through the panels, like it's really hard for me to get through.
Yeah, I have a really hard time, like you said, like reading those painted comics and the ones that are like, they're not photorealistic per se, but they are like a
Mhm,
hyper realistic rendering style,
mhm.
and like it's just like one level below photorealism, and like you said, it feels really stiff, and I have a hard time getting into the
Yeah.
story when that happens, and I
Yeah, I think there's some interesting exceptions like um Alex Ross for instance.
yeah,
It's
Alex
very
Ross's
like
stuff is really cool.
very close. Yeah, it's very close to being like hyper realistic, but it does have a lot of energy to it. So it's like
Yeah,
something like reading something like I think Kingdom Come is like I can get through that because it
yeah.
doesn't stuck, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the difference is, but I had the same. I can really dig Kingdom Come, but there are a lot of other books, which I can't think of an example right now, which have that highly rendered, super detailed, like you can see the reflection in the eyeballs painting style, and that just freezes me. I have to reread the page like three or four times.
Yeah, it's definitely I always love like trying to figure this stuff out and trying to figure out all the different ways that you can stylize comics or just art in general and then the different ways like some things work better than others, because there's like there's something like, you know, like Wicked and Divine, and then if you have something completely cartoony on the other side, like um I have one that's popular off the top of my head, but something like Bandette or something like that, which
Yep.
is super cartoony. It's like not one's not better than the other. It's just different
Yeah, it's just different.
approaches. Hmm.
Exactly. And like I Hate Fairyland
Mm-hmm.
is very cartoony, but it's a really good read.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's not cartoony versus realism isn't one better than the other. They all have their place, but
Hmm.
some just work better for other people's reading styles and enjoyment.
Hmm.
I can tell you someone whose sort of cartoony style I really, really, really admire and am very envious of is Rose Stein from
Oh yeah.
Crowded. I had Ted and Ro
Yeah.
on
Ro is
season
wonderful.
one of the show, and they had me read Witch Hat Atelier for the episode.
Oh,
That
it's a good book. Yeah.
that book is fantastic. It's one of the first books in the last decade that have made me laugh out loud, and not because of the story, because of how frigging clever the panels were.
Hmm.
There was just one
Yeah.
panel in particular, the way that they edged it and framed it and had the figures interact with the edge of the frame. And I just turned the page and looked at it and I just started laughing because I was like, that's amazing. But
Hmm.
I love Rose style and then combined with Ted's inking style as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
They're wonderful. I think it's so interesting because I just looked it up. I'm looking at the pages again, and it's just like it's so hard to tell how like how cartoony this actually is,
Yeah,
because
you
the
know what I
facial
mean?
expressions are very like, yeah, they're very cartoony and pushed, but like the actual proportions of the face are super are not super different than someone like Jamie McKelvie.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
That's what I mean. Like
it's
that's what I love about
yeah.
it. Like their ability to push those cartoony exaggerated expressions and still keep this really nice proportioned comic book style. That
Hmm.
is end goals for me. I would love to be able to draw even close
Hmm.
to that energy. Not necessarily the same style as Rogue, but you know that energy, that ability with my own style sensibilities. I would. That's my end goal.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I've heard before with with styles and with comics, like something that's more cartoony is something that you see yourself in, whereas
Mm,
something that's more realistic is you see other people in, or you separate yourself
yeah,
from it. So it's definitely there's like a lot. I always try to like figure out and break it down as much as I can, but there's so much to learn from different stuff like this, even if you stick to one style only.
yeah, exactly. And that's it. Like I can't imagine myself trying to do too many different styles
Hmm.
because, well, just one with my ADHD. Like that's a lot of plates to spin. um, but I do notice that like my when I design paper minis for D&D versus art that I'm drawing for comics and stuff like that, there is a distinct difference there.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I'm. Yeah,
I don't even know what
I.
exactly the difference is or how I chose to do it either.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's different art styles for different purposes, I think too.
Mm,
Like I, I'm in a D&D game, and when I started making my character, I tried to develop a completely different style just to draw her. So, and then I ended up using that for a lot of different things, like
I've
commissions and,
been
you know,
loving the D
comics
and
and
D
stuff.
pieces you've been putting up.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. I I'm in a D&D group of completely just all artists, and
Mm,
like I think two of them are animation artists or like ex animation artists, so they draw super fast as well. So every time we have a D&D game, we have about minds between everyone of just the game, and it's very fun.
Yep, this is the same. Like every time I hear that Ro and Ted have just had a session of D&D, like for the next 4 days, there's like 20 new pieces of art from Ro.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's I don't know, it's something special about it.
Yeah, there really is, and actually, that's something that I've been hoping to work on for probably next year now because my plate is very full. But I wanted to do an all comics creators streamed D&D game sometime soon
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
because I've got my regular D&D show that I do, but I've like it's fully booked up now. I was hoping to get an all comics creator team put together before I booked it all out, but it didn't quite work. But I'd love to
Mhm.
do that next year sometime with just all other creators and just the way we all have to think about so many weird story things and stuff on the fly. It makes for an interesting experience. So I'd really like to see that play out in a streamed game.
Mhm. Yeah, it's super fun. I feel like there's this huge community on like Twitter and online of like D&D artists or just like not even like people that work for professionally doing art for like Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
It's like more like just people that just love drawing their D&D characters. It's really fun.
it really is.
It's
I've
a
got
really yeah.
yeah, I've got a half finished picture of my character sitting on my tablet next to me. So
Yeah, it's definitely like because it's like I don't know. There's something like more personal about it, I
there really
think.
is. Um, it's just something something special to do to be able to do that,
Hmm.
and it's really interesting as well when I see other artists like swap characters and get they can already draw their own characters and then they swap characters with their mates so that they can do each other's and just seeing like the interesting different takes on them and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because the group I was talking about that I played D&D with, um, you know, like I was doing a lot of like cartoony, like lineless looking, like Disney-ish styles for my character, and then like my other friends would try to draw her and they just be like how does her hair work, is it like a braid or is it like bundled up, and I'm just I don't know. I just tried to figure out a good shape for that style, and then
Yep.
if it's a braid or if it's yeah, and so it's like oh it's I feel like some of them actually have a hard time compared
Yeah,
to someone something else.
I know exactly what you mean. And it's funny though because like I actually have done a finished piece of art of my character,
Mhm,
but it's weird
mhm.
because it was easier for me to teach myself how to learn a completely new augmented reality software for to do that than to finish the 2D piece of art I've got sitting on my tablet.
Well, yeah, I get what you mean. It's like hard. It's I feel like
Oh,
takes up
that's not
so
the
much
finished version.
energy.
Like this is the
Takes
work
up
in progress version of that art that I did. If it's shown up on the screen now, yeah, there we go. So it was so much easier for me to do this than to sit down and actually finish a drawing.
I don't see anything, but maybe Twitch just hasn't refreshed for
Oh,
me
hang
yet.
on, it might only be working on the. Oh yes,
Oh.
no, Twitch is on a delay, so yeah, it might only be visible
Mm.
in the Google call right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's I still don't think I can see it, but
Oh, that's strange. It's showing up on my thing, but for some reason it's not updated yet. But anyway, yeah, I taught myself how to make an AR mask of my character in the last 2 days, and so because I'm playing this character next week in a streamed game for Jasper's Game
Mm.
Week, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, but I still haven't finished one pin-up sketch.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like it's interesting because I definitely feel like sometimes like doing something like a comic book page can be easier than like drawing a pinup or cover to me at times. It's more work in a lot of ways, but like it's just I feel like I feel like there's expectations for me, to like
Yeah.
finish like you should be doing finished pieces and you should be doing backgrounds and stuff like that. It's like I just would rather I just would rather do a page or like a character designer stuff. So it's I don't know.
Yeah, no, no, I know
It's
exactly what
there's
you mean
definitely
there.
different skill sets for everything. Yeah.
Well, I think that's brought us pretty much to the end of, oh, just over the hour, which is great. So, in terms of your own stuff, what have you
Mhm.
got going on right now, or what is available that people can find and get of your work?
Yeah, the Vein from Oni Press just had the trade paperback release. So that's out now. I think The Wilds and Snapdash Hustle and my other books and stuff like that can
Yeah,
just probably be found online or
The Wilds
Comixology or something.
is up on Comixology, so that am definitely going to link that in the description for those of you watching on YouTube because The Wilds is a phenomenal book and you should go and get it.
Thank you. Yeah, I other than that, I mean, you can just follow me online. I have a webcomic, but it hasn't been updated, and I don't know if I'm gonna get back to it anytime soon. So, yeah.
And Emily's Twitter is in the chat just there, so you can follow Emily on Twitter to see what work is coming out. But oh, The Vein, is that the one you mean?
Hmm.
Yep, I have been digging the hell out of that. I just read the last
Uh,
issue last week.
that was very
Um,
fun to work on. Yeah, that was.
there's a link in the chat for anyone watching right now. I'll link that in the YouTube description as well. Um, both of those books are really good, and you guys should go read them and keep an eye out for anything new that Emily's got coming out because Emily does great work, and Emily's been working with some of my favorite writing creators. So just keep an eye out.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah.
And thank you very much for your time and for joining me. I know it's evening over there for you, so I really appreciate you coming to hang out after dinner.
Yeah, no worries.
And for everybody else in the chat, please, if you can, follow the account, subscribe if you want to. If you want to continue to support the show and my other shows, check out Patreon. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I've got to get in the habit of actually mentioning that in the show from now on. I am completely working from the studio now and appreciate every little bit of support. So even if it's just sharing the episodes or liking and commenting on a video on YouTube, every little bit helps gain a bit more traction for the show. So in season 3, I can come back with even more creators and talk about more comics and make more games for you guys to watch and play. So this has been No Capes. I've been Sean Sunday. This has been Emily Pearson. Tune in next week for another episode. I can't remember who the guest is right now, but same time, same channel. And wait for Thursday night. This episode will be up on YouTube if you didn't catch all of it. So bye for now, and we'll see you next week.